So today's story is about a guy who walks into one of Manhattan's most exclusive private dining rooms carrying a handmade birthday card and wearing a plain navy suit. His stepmother picks it up, sneers at it, and shoves it back across the table like a parking ticket. His brother-in-law, hotshot corporate lawyer Tom Ford suit, leans over and offers him a minimum wage filing job out of pity. His half-sister laughs. His dad adjusts his silk tie and tells him to stop embarrassing the family. This guy just sits there, quiet, patient, because that card isn't a card. And what's in his leather bag is about to make this the most expensive dinner his family ever sat down to. My dad's new wife mocked me at dinner. Dad told me to stop making a scene. So I stayed quiet until she mentioned her job. Then I pulled out my phone and watched their smile fade. My dad Frank turned 62 this year, and I want to be upfront. I had zero expectations walking in. The second the reservation confirmation hit my phone, I felt that specific low-level dread that only comes from years of knowing exactly how this family operates. Every gathering eventually turns into a blood sport where I'm the designated punching bag. The only reason I showed up was because I'd been sitting on something for 3 months, and tonight was finally the night. I'm Nate, 34 years old. Frank married Claire when I was 19. She's 41, runs a luxury aesthetics clinic called Lumiere in Manhattan, and has spent the better part of a decade treating me like an inconvenient smudge on her otherwise perfect life. My half-sister Paige, Frank's daughter with Claire, 28 years old, grew up with brand new imported cars as birthday presents while I was told to take the bus. And then there's Victor, Paige's husband. 32, Manhattan corporate lawyer, passed the New York bar on his first try, and I promise you he has never let a single person in any room ever forget it. The way they see me: boring accountant, modest car, quiet life, nothing worth paying attention to. That's by design. They just don't know that part. The restaurant was Joncourt, private dining room in the back, mahogany walls, crystal chandelier, the kind of place that describes their water as curated. I got there 10 minutes early and sat alone. Soft jazz bleeding through the walls from the main dining room, bread basket on the table I didn't touch. There was an abstract painting on the far wall, dark greens and blues, and I spent a few minutes just looking at it. Gave me something to focus on that wasn't my own nerves. Frank and Claire came in together. She was in a custom silk gown with diamond rings stacked on 3 fingers, engineered to make everyone in the room feel underdressed. She spotted me immediately, and her expression landed somewhere between disgust and mild annoyance, like finding a scuff on a new car. I'd placed a plain white envelope on the table in front of Frank's seat. No bow. She picked it up before he even sat down, held it between 2 fingers at arm's length. Is this supposed to be a joke, Nate? She pushed it back hard across the tablecloth, hard enough to slide past the silverware and bump against my water glass. I really thought that by 34, you'd have outgrown arts and crafts. Sharp, short laugh. The server in the corner shifted his weight. I mean, look at this. You brought a handmade card to a dinner that cost $1,000 a plate. Couldn't you stop at literally one store on the way here? I know you push papers at some boring accounting firm, but surely you can put together something for your own father. Inside that envelope was a certificate proving I'd secretly paid off the massive fraudulent debt she'd forged against my father's ancestral home. $4 million of my own money, but I didn't say anything about that. I tucked the envelope back into my bag and kept my mouth shut. Frank, sipping sparkling water, wearing a silk tie that probably cost more than most people's car payments, looked at me the way you look at a crack in your windshield. He leaned forward. She's right, Nate. I asked you to make an effort tonight. You show up in a plain suit, hand me a piece of paper. You're 34 years old. When are you going to get a real career and stop embarrassing the family image? I'm sorry the gift doesn't meet your standards. Don't act like a victim, Claire snapped, taking a slow sip of her sparkling cider. You've always been jealous of what we have. Just because you couldn't make anything of your life doesn't mean you get to drag everyone down with the energy you bring to these things. I kept my face flat. The thing about my family is, they mistake silence for weakness. They saw a guy in a modest blazer who drove a practical car and lived a quiet life. They didn't see the senior partner of one of the most aggressive private equity firms on Wall Street sitting directly across from them. They didn't know the boring accountant they were humiliating held the strings to their entire financial existence. I folded my hands. You're absolutely right, Claire. Please enjoy your evening. She rolled her eyes and dismissed me. Then Victor decided it was his turn. Victor is everything you'd expect from the phrase Manhattan corporate lawyer who knows it. Tailored suit, cufflinks, a watch he'll mention before you can ask. He leaned forward with a wide, completely empty smile. Look, Nate, I know it can be tough out there for people without a clear career path. You're pushing mid-30s. Entry-level accounting work isn't going to pay the rent forever. He let that sit. Actually, I was talking to the managing partner at my firm last week. We're expanding the records department. Data entry, filing, scanning documents. Minimum wage, maybe a little above if you show initiative. Comes with a dental plan. I can put in a good word. Give you a real shot at finally building something. Paige pressed her manicured hand over his wrist, lit up like he'd just solved world hunger. That's so generous, Victor. Seriously, Nate, just take it. It's not like you have anything better going on, and it would be so nice to finally see you buy your own clothes. She giggled. Remember when Mom used to give you my old winter coats because they still had some life left in them? You looked so funny walking around in jackets that were 2 full seasons out of style. She laughed. Claire joined in, and Frank, my father, chuckled softly, shaking his head like my existence was a harmless old joke everyone already knew the punchline to. Thank you, Victor. Good to see someone trying to help the kid out. Lord knows he needs direction. I didn't break character. Didn't explain my wardrobe choices or defend my career. I just sat there and let the laughter do what it wanted. Because what they didn't know, for the past 6 months my firm had been quietly buying controlling shares in Victor's law firm through a series of shell corporations. I'd gotten the confirmation text from my assistant on the way in, right when I walked through the parking garage. Wait, actually it was after I sat down, before the bread came out. Whatever, doesn't matter exactly when. 2 sentences. Acquisition finalized. You hold 73% of voting shares awaiting your command. I'd locked the screen and put the phone back in my bag without a word. Anyway, the evening moved forward. Claire talked about the Italian marble renovation at the clinic. Victor talked about a case he couldn't discuss in detail, but somehow still talked about in detail. I ate my food and said nothing. Hold on. Let me jump in here. This is me, not Nate talking, because I need to take a second with this. Captain Courtroom just offered a minimum wage filing job to his actual boss. The man who now signs his paychecks and owns his office building just sat there quietly listening to a pitch about dental plans and showing initiative. And Claire called the card Arts and Crafts, without knowing it was addressed to a father whose house Nate had already quietly saved. These people have absolutely no idea what they're sitting across from. Buckle up, because the next part is where it gets interesting. About 40 minutes in, the head server came through carrying a thick, leather-bound private reserve menu, the kind of book they only bring out for guests who want to make a statement. He moved toward Frank, but before he could extend it, Claire snatched it out of his hands. I'll be choosing for the table tonight. She skipped past the standard sections without slowing down. Her finger dragged through the exclusive reserve offerings at the back until it stopped on the Grand Reserve tasting experience. 8 courses, private-sourced ingredients, described in the menu as a culinary event rather than a meal. She looked directly at me. 5 settings of the Grand Reserve. The server held his composure. An excellent selection, madam. I do need to let you know, the Grand Reserve is priced at $4,800 per setting. For the full table, that's $24,000 before the private dining surcharge. Shall I confirm? Confirm it, Claire said smoothly. She turned back to me. My lovely stepson Nate will be covering the full bill tonight. It's the least he can do. Paying for his father's birthday dinner is a beautiful way to prove he still respects the hierarchy of this family. 24 grand in food I didn't order, plus the private room surcharge. She just tried to drop close to $28,000 on my shoulders, fully expecting it to flatten me. I looked at Frank. 3 seconds. He adjusted his napkin. She makes a valid point. You're 34. You've never contributed anything of real substance to this family. Taking care of the check tonight would show me you're finally ready to step up. Victor crossed his arms and switched to his full courtroom voice, loud enough for the server by the wall. It's basic familial equity. Your father provided for you for 18 years. Refusing to contribute is a fundamental breach of obligation. Consider it a retroactive tax for everything this family gave you growing up. Not that Frank ever gave me anything. I put myself through college working 2 jobs, while Paige got a luxury SUV for getting a passing grade in high school. But I didn't say that. Long sip of sparkling water. Set the glass back down. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I won't be paying for meals I didn't order. I'll cover my own food and my own water. The rest is on you." Victor slammed his hand on the table and launched into a full, unhinged lecture about poverty mindsets, the social contract of the family unit, retroactive contributions. He actually said social contract out loud at a birthday dinner. Claire cut him off with a theatrical sigh, reached into her bag, produced a thick platinum credit card, and dropped it on the center of the table with a sharp metallic slap. "I'll pay, because unlike some people, I know how to generate real wealth." She lifted her chin. "In fact, I wasn't going to mention this until dessert, but my company just closed a massive funding round this morning. $15 million in venture capital from a top-tier investment firm. That's what an actual empire looks like, Nate." I felt a slight twitch at the corner of my mouth. Pressed it completely flat. $15 million. She was bragging about the exact sum my firm had wired into her account that morning through an anonymous subsidiary I'd created called Vistara Capital. She thought she'd conquered the market. She had absolutely no idea I was the one holding the strings. Frank beamed like she'd announced a Nobel Prize. Victor and Paige nodded admiringly. Claire turned her full triumphant gaze onto me. $15 million, Nate. I built a luxury empire from scratch while you're pushing papers in a cubicle. You're nothing but a financial parasite. You show up to these dinners, sit in rooms we pay for, eat the food we order, and contribute absolutely nothing to the legacy of this family." She waved over the server. He took the card and left. I already knew exactly what was about to happen. For the next few minutes, Claire held court. Investment partners who'd begged her to take their money. The marble lobby. She even leaned over and asked me if my little accounting office offered free coffee, or if we had to bring our own mugs. "You'd be surprised what goes on in my office," I said. Then the doors opened. The server came back in. Wrong posture, shoulders forward, face drained. He was holding Claire's platinum card between two fingers like it had teeth. He leaned toward her and dropped his voice. "Madam, I'm so sorry. Your card has been declined." Claire froze. Glass stopped halfway to her mouth. "I ran it twice. The transaction isn't processing. I also called merchant services to push it through manually, and the representative informed me there's a hard federal freeze on all of your assets. The account is completely locked." Hard. Federal. Freeze. The words just sat there on the table. Frank went pale. Paige covered her mouth. Victor sat up straight, every lawyer instinct activating at once. Claire erupted, shoved her chair back, stood over the server, and dropped every last trace of high society composure. "Are you calling me a criminal? I deposited $15 million into that account this morning. I am the chief executive officer of a multi-million-dollar company. Your machine is broken. I want to speak to the owner right now." I stayed seated, watching. Victor produced his corporate credit card and slid it toward the server. "Put the full balance on this," he said, with the complete authority of a man who has $2 million in liquid assets and a corner office. "Let's end this spectacle." Paige let out a loud sigh of relief. "Oh, thank God, Victor." She looked at me. "See, Nate? This is what a real man does. You should be taking notes." The server inserted the card. The machine spun. Sharp beep, red screen. He wiped the card, inserted it again. Another beep, another red. Declined. "Sir, I'm afraid your card has also been declined. Same error code. Account frozen. Contact your issuing institution." Victor's smirk vanished in real time. He shot forward in his chair. "That is a corporate account with over $2 million in liquid capital. I've run it twice, sir. The result is the same." Paige grabbed his arm. "Victor, are we broke?" "Shut up, Paige." He snatched his phone and started hammering his banking app with both thumbs. "Someone compromised the firm's firewall. I'm going to sue this bank into the Stone Age." The panic in the room had a specific texture, sour and metallic. The expensive food sat untouched on every plate while the people around it slowly came apart. Claire was frantically composing messages to investors who weren't going to respond. Paige was gripping her necklace, staring at her husband's useless card on the table. And Frank turned his eyes to me. That look. The look of a drowning man who just spotted a lifeguard. Pause. This is me jumping in, because I need a second to appreciate what just happened. 2 cards, 2 declines, back to back. The self-described financial genius, with the courtroom monologue about poverty mindsets, just watched his corporate card get declined in public at a table where 10 minutes ago he was explaining familial equity to the man who legally owns his building. That's not irony. That is a cosmic invoice delivered exactly on schedule. And Nate hasn't even reached into his bag yet. I took one more bite of sea bass. Let the chaos orbit around me for another 20 seconds. Set my fork down. Reached into my bag, bypassed my personal card entirely, found the hidden zipper compartment at the back. Cold, heavy titanium. I pulled out my black Amex Centurion card and extended it toward the server. Please run this. Full balance under the primary account for Apex Private Equity. The server stared at it before taking it, his fingers registering the weight the moment they made contact. He'd spent the last hour watching my family treat me like the broke cousin at a wedding. He glanced at the name on the card, then turned toward the machine. Right away, sir. Victor's phone dropped to the table. His eyes locked on the card in the server's hand, and I watched something move across his face. The fast, cold calculation of a man running numbers he doesn't like the answer to. As a Manhattan corporate lawyer, he tracked the major players. He knew exactly who Apex Private Equity was. Multi-billion-dollar firm, aggressive acquisitions, the kind of operation that could quietly dismantle a mid-sized law practice before the market opened on Monday. And the name on that card was Nate. The machine chimed. Green screen. Approved. The server printed the receipt, placed it in a leather folio, walked directly past Frank, ignored Victor completely, and set it next to my water glass with a slight bow. Thank you, sir. Authorization was completely successful. I'll leave you and your family to your evening. He walked out. Door clicked shut. Complete silence. Wait, Victor said, his voice about 2 octaves lower than his earlier courtroom performance. That's your card. Your name is on an Apex Centurion card. Not a question, just a flat statement. It is, I said. How does an entry-level accountant have an Apex corporate card? I'm not an entry-level accountant, I said. For the past 6 years, I've been the senior partner and lead forensic auditor at Apex Private Equity. I co-founded the firm. That card is linked to my primary operating account. Frank made a sound I can't fully describe. Part gasp, part total deflation. Claire recovered first and immediately accused me of stealing the card. Being a criminal. Entry-level clerks don't end up with black cards, she snapped. You stole it from someone at your firm. I don't steal from the company I built, I said. She opened her mouth. Nothing useful came out. The $15 million you've been celebrating tonight, I continued, keeping my voice conversational. That was me. Vistera Capital, the venture firm that wired it to your account this morning, is a subsidiary I created specifically for high-risk asset captures. When your clinic showed up flagged by federal regulators for suspicious offshore wire transfers, I took a closer look. I paused. I was the anonymous lead investor, Claire. I approved every dollar. And that federal freeze on your accounts, after your team tried to move $12 million to a Cayman Island shell company this afternoon, that was me too. She went completely still. You set me up, she whispered. You signed the contracts, I said. We handed you the rope. Victor stood up, buttoned his jacket, that deliberate gesture, and launched into a full legal performance. Tortious interference, corporate espionage, malicious financial entrapment, federal statutes. He would file an injunction. He would have my licenses revoked. He would drag me through years of brutal litigation and leave me begging for that data entry job just to cover my legal debts. I let the echo of his threats settle into the room. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. Great speech. Genuinely impressive voice. It's a shame the legal comprehension doesn't match the volume. I held up the screen. You left your tablet on the table, Victor. Open it. A notification appeared on his device. An airdrop from me. His instincts told him not to open an unsolicited file from the person he'd just threatened with federal litigation. His ego won the argument in about 4 seconds. He picked up the tablet. Hold on, because Captain Courtroom is about to open a file sent to him by the person he offered a minimum wage job to earlier tonight. And I've been waiting for this moment since he said, dental plan included. Let me be clear about what's in this file. It's not just embarrassing, it's career-ending. It's the kind of document where you read the title and have to just sit down with your life choices. He's been the loudest person in this room for 3 solid hours. That is about to change. Read it out loud, Victor. I watched the screen light up his face. watched the arrogance drain from his eyes in stages, slow and methodical. "What is it?" Paige leaned toward him. "Tell us it's fake." "Read the title out loud," I said. "Let the whole table hear exactly who's going out of business tonight." Victor swallowed hard. "Notice of finalized corporate acquisition," he read, his voice completely stripped of its earlier authority. "Between Apex Private Equity and the managing partners of—" He stopped. "Say the name of your firm." He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Then he said it. Paige grabbed the edge of the table. "That's your firm. Victor, what does acquisition mean?" "It means exactly what it sounds like," I said. "As of 3 o'clock this afternoon, Apex holds 73% controlling interest in his entire legal practice. We own the office leases, the server networks, the client lists, and the employment contracts of every attorney on the payroll, including your husband." Victor dropped the tablet. It skidded into the breadbasket. "You're my boss," he breathed. "You're actually my boss." "I'm not just your boss," I said. "I decide whether you keep your corner office. I sign your paychecks. I have the authority to terminate your contract with cause, strip your equity, and leave you with nothing." He looked like someone had quietly removed every load-bearing wall in his life. Paige stood up, finger pointed. "My husband has major clients. They'll follow him anywhere. He'll start his own firm." "He signed a non-compete when he made junior partner," I said, "which Apex now enforces. If he contacts a single client on his way out, I'll sue him flat." I looked at Victor directly. "Non-compete is ironclad. Termination with cause means no corporate law practice in New York for 5 years." Victor looked at his wife. His voice had lost everything. "She's right. The clause is airtight. She'd married a man who walked into every room like he owned it." Right now, he was standing in an expensive suit, realizing the woman he'd offered a minimum wage filing job owned the building he was standing in. I looked at him, unhurried. "And I do have cause. As majority shareholder, it was my duty to audit the accounts you manage personally. Finding hidden money is what I do." He went very still. "What did you find?" "Okay, pause. This is me, because I want to mark this moment properly." Victor went from offering Nate a minimum wage data entry job with a dental plan to standing in that room realizing Nate owns his building, his client list, his health insurance, and now holds a forensic audit of his personal accounts. That is not karma. That is a controlled demolition carried out by a man who showed up tonight in a plain navy suit with a handmade birthday card. The Paige reveal coming up next? Somehow even worse than the Victor one. Stay with it. I turned my attention to Paige. She was still standing, arms crossed, wearing the expression of a woman who thought she had ground left to stand on. She didn't know the crosshairs had just shifted directly onto her. "Let's talk about the Hope Foundation for Underprivileged Youth," I said. "Paige's charity. Very noble. Galas, designer gowns, press photos with the city elite. She raises hundreds of thousands every year." Paige crossed her arms tighter. "My charity does incredible work." "You raise a lot of money," I agreed. "The problem is where it actually goes." I turned to Victor. "When I audited your private server, I found the tax shelters you drafted for your wife's charity. Dummy corporations in Delaware. Forged expense reports. You used your legal credentials to set up offshore holding accounts and funnel those charitable donations. Money meant for underprivileged youth. Directly into Paige's personal trust fund. Imported cars, designer jewelry, luxury vacations. All of it." Paige's hands flew to her mouth. She looked at Victor, waited for him to fix it. That was what he did. He fixed things. Victor kept his eyes on the floor. "Charity fraud," Frank said, barely audible, staring at his youngest daughter with an expression I'd never seen from him before. Like he didn't recognize her. "You've been stealing from a charity, Paige." "The IRS takes that very personally," I said. "They don't just fine you. They freeze assets, seize property, pursue federal charges. And since Paige is listed as the primary beneficiary of that trust, she'll be in the federal case right next to her husband." Paige let out a loud sob. Victor grabbed her arm without any tenderness in it. "Get your bag. We're leaving right now." She looked at him like he'd spoken a different language. "We can't just leave. Victor, what about my gala? What about the trust fund for the new house?" "There is no trust fund anymore," he said through his teeth. "If we stay in this room another 5 minutes, I lose my license to practice corporate law forever. Coat, now. Claire scrambled to her feet. She saw her last defense walking toward the door. Victor, you can't leave us here. My accounts are frozen. You're a brilliant lawyer. You can file the injunction, just like you said. Victor stopped, turned, looked at Claire with the expression of a man torching a bridge while standing on it. Are you actually out of your mind? You committed federal wire fraud using money from a private equity firm that now owns my career. I cannot associate with you in any legal capacity. You are radioactive. You're on your own. We're family, she shrieked. We're done, he said. He pulled Paige through the mahogany doors. They slammed shut. Just like that, the loudest people in the room were gone the second the money stopped being theoretical. That's always how it goes with people like that. Staying is for when there's something left to gain. Claire sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking hard enough that she knocked her crystal glass off the table. It shattered on the marble floor. Neither of them moved toward it. Before I pulled out my phone, Claire made one last play. Because Claire always makes one last play. She lifted her chin. You think you've won something here. You froze my accounts and scared off Victor. But Vistara Capital has massive institutional backing. They are contractually obligated to protect my company. When I call their managing directors tomorrow, they will send an army of lawyers that will make Victor look like a traffic court attorney. Are you finished? I asked. She crossed her arms. Call off the freeze before I make a phone call that ends your career. I rested my forearms on the table. Vistara Capital is a ghost subsidiary, Claire. A shell company, wholly owned and operated by Apex Private Equity. I created it specifically for high-risk asset captures. I was your venture capital partner. I was the executive board you had video conferences with. The people who loved your business model so much. I paused. They loved it because it was one of the most transparently fraudulent structures my team had ever seen. The moment you accepted that Vistara money, you gave us full legal authorization to audit every ledger, every account, and every digital footprint attached to your clinic. We gave you the rope. You built the rest. She stared at me. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I pulled out my phone and connected to the private dining room's display screen. A massive financial flowchart appeared. Red and black lines mapping every fraudulent transaction connected to Lumiere Aesthetics. Shell companies, offshore accounts, dummy vendor invoices, all radiating outward from the clinic's name at the center. It looked less like a business structure and more like a diagram of a criminal organization. I walked them through it. The fake medical vendor invoices, hundreds of thousands of dollars paid monthly for cosmetic supplies from companies that didn't exist, registered to a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. The money wired directly into Claire's personal offshore trust. The fabricated quarterly reports she'd been showing Frank for 3 years, side by side on screen with the actual bank statements. Ascending green graphs on the left. A catastrophic downward spiral on the right. She showed you manufactured spreadsheets, I told Frank. I showed him the forged power of attorney. Drafted by Victor. Signed with Frank's forged signature while he was on a golf trip in Scotland. The retirement fund she'd systematically liquidated. The municipal bonds cashed out. 4 decades of careful building, completely gone. And then the ancestral Hampton estate, secondary mortgage, tertiary mortgage, $4 million in equity, quietly drained and funneled into the clinic to keep the lights on, and Claire's lifestyle running. Frank's phone slipped out of his hands, trying to check his banking app. He grabbed it back, navigated from account to account, looked for something, anything, that wasn't zero. There wasn't one. He was 62 years old. His entire financial life was gone. With the mortgages Claire had secretly taken on the estate, his net worth wasn't just zero. It was deeply, irreversibly negative. He let the phone slide off his fingers again, pressed both hands over his face. She was going to leave you holding it, I said. The $15 million from Vistara was her golden parachute. Move $12 million offshore disguised as a bulk equipment purchase, wait a few months, declare bankruptcy for the clinic, cite market conditions. And since you're listed as the primary guarantor on her commercial lease, Frank, the creditors would have come directly after you. She'd have been in the Caribbean while you filed for bankruptcy at 62. Frank lowered his hands. He looked at Claire. Not with anger at first, just with the hollow disbelief of a man who's had his entire world explained to him in the worst possible terms. "You were going to destroy me," he said, "and leave." Claire reached for him, sobbing. He shoved her hand away, hard. "You stole my life," he said, louder. "You forged my name, and you stole my life. Hold on. Just for a second." The guy who walked into this dinner with a handmade card and a plain navy suit. The one his dad told to stop embarrassing the family before he'd said 5 words. Just systematically dismantled every single person at that table using nothing but documentation and patience. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He didn't defend himself once when they laughed at his clothes. He just waited. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest one. It's the quiet one who's been running the math the entire time. One move left. I stood quietly at the end of the table and let Frank absorb it. He'd chosen Claire and Paige over me for 34 years. Defended them, funded them, laughed along when they treated me like a punchline. And the second the money stopped, the second the illusion cracked, they were gone without a second thought. No loyalty, no hesitation. I reached into my bag one final time. The white envelope. The one Claire had sneered at 2 hours ago. The handmade birthday card she'd shoved back across the table before I'd said hello. Not a card. A thick stack of official documents. Gold seal of the county clerk at the top. Satisfaction of mortgage. Beneath it, the original deed to the Hampton estate. Free and clear. When my forensic team first uncovered the forged mortgages Claire had taken against the estate, I had 2 options. Let the bank foreclose and walk away, or use my own capital to buy out the debt. On paper, the rational move was obvious. Poisoned asset, encumbered by forgery and fraud. No business case for preserving it. But I kept thinking about the library in that house. The room I used to disappear into as a kid, while Frank hosted dinner parties downstairs. Conversations I wasn't included in. Guests I was never introduced to. I remembered sitting on the floor in that library, listening to the sounds of the party coming up through the floorboards. 3 generations in our family. It didn't deserve what was happening to it, so I'd wired the $4 million. Cleared every mortgage. The deed was clean. I laid it on the table in front of Frank. He saw the county seal and the words, "Satisfaction of mortgage." And something happened in his face I'd genuinely never seen from him. Real relief. Both hands went for the documents immediately. "Nate," his voice was shaking. "You saved the house. You actually paid it off." He was crying before he finished the sentence, which I'd also never seen. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I was blind. I was stupid. I let them treat you like garbage for 34 years. I let him get about 4 sentences in. Then I picked the documents back up. The relief collapsed in real time. A new kind of fear moved across his face, smaller and more specific, with his name on it. "I brought that here to give you," I said. "Before I sat down tonight, before any of this, I was going to hand you back your house and offer you a fresh start. That was what was in the envelope. Not a card. A deed." I looked at him directly. "And then I sat at this table. I watched you nod along while Claire called me a parasite. I heard you tell me to stop embarrassing the family. I watched you demand that I pay $28,000 to prove my worth to people who've never assigned any worth to me at all." His hands were shaking openly. "A gift requires a recipient worth giving it to," I said. "Tonight, you showed me exactly who you are." "No," he said, pushing himself up from the table. "Nate, please, I'm begging you. You can't let me lose everything at 62. I'm your father. Give me a loan. I'll pay you back. Please." I'd thought about this moment for years, wondered what I'd actually feel when it came. Not much, as it turned out. I held the deed with both hands and ripped it straight down the middle. The heavy parchment tore cleanly, the gold seal splitting right with it. Folded the halves, ripped again. Kept going until the satisfaction of mortgage and the $4 million fresh start were nothing but a handful of jagged pieces. I opened my palms over Frank's dinner plate. The pieces drifted down onto the white porcelain. He stared at them. "Stop making a scene, Frank," I said, keeping my voice completely flat. "You're embarrassing the family." He recognized those words. His own words, from barely 2 hours ago, used to dismiss me before I'd said anything at all. The recognition hit his face like something physical. That's when the lights came through the frosted windows. Blue. Red, rhythmic, and steady. Then footsteps on the marble outside, the specific weight and deliberate pace of people who walk with federal authority. The mahogany doors opened hard. 5 agents moved into the private dining room with the quiet efficiency of people who've done this in nicer places and will do it again tomorrow. Dark suits, navy windbreakers with bold yellow letters, FBI, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I hold a federally licensed forensic audit certification. It comes with mandatory reporting obligations. When you uncover wire fraud, bank fraud, offshore tax evasion, and forged financial instruments, you can't keep it as a family secret. You package the evidence and send it to the appropriate people. That afternoon, I'd sent the encrypted file. Every forged document, every fake invoice, every fraudulent tax return, the offshore account trail, the mortgage forgery timeline, directly to the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division and the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit. All I had to do was show up for dinner and wait. The lead agent moved straight toward Claire. "Madam, I'm Special Agent Davis with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're executing a federal arrest warrant for multiple counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, and tax evasion. Please turn around." She screamed, grabbed the tablecloth, scrambled toward Frank. "Richard, tell them it's a mistake. Call Victor. We have money." Frank didn't move, didn't turn his head. He sat staring at the torn pieces of the deed on his plate. 2 agents took Claire by the arms and lifted her to her feet. She thrashed, her gown twisted, her hair came loose. The image she'd spent years and millions constructing, the untouchable CEO, the mogul, the empire, gone in about 30 seconds in the back room of a Manhattan restaurant. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." They walked her toward the door. She twisted back and found my eyes one last time. "Nate, please tell them to stop. Take the clinic. Take the car. Take all of it. I'm sorry. Just tell them to let me go." "That's out of my hands now," I said. "The federal government doesn't negotiate." The doors swung shut. Her voice faded down the hallway, past all the Manhattan elite she'd spent years desperately trying to impress. They were watching now. The room went completely silent. I picked up my bag. I stopped by the head server near the entrance before leaving. He looked like a man who'd aged 5 years in 3 hours. I handed him a thick envelope, $5,000 in cash I'd brought specifically for this evening, knowing my family would cause a scene. "Divide this evenly among the staff. I'm sorry about the disruption. They won't be back." He bowed slightly, hands still shaking. I walked through the main dining room. Everyone quiet, forks down, watching. The hedge fund managers, the socialites, the old money families, all of them watching me. The guy in the plain navy suit walked through the middle of the wreckage completely unbothered. I kept my eyes forward, pushed through the front door. Cool Manhattan air, clean and quiet. A black SUV was already pulling to the curb. My driver, Ray, had the rear door open before I reached it. I got in. The door shut. The city went quiet. I leaned my head back against the headrest and let out a long exhale. Final update. Claire was formally charged with federal wire fraud, bank fraud, and tax evasion. The Cayman Island accounts were traced and frozen. Lumiere Aesthetics was seized by federal receivers pending full asset liquidation. Her personal items, the jewelry, the vehicles, the clinic contents, were inventoried as corporate assets under the acquisition clause she'd signed without reading carefully enough. Victor resigned from the firm 4 business days later. I sent him a written performance review first, as a matter of protocol. The non-compete is being strictly enforced. He hasn't attempted to contact any firm clients. Page is cooperating with the IRS investigation in exchange for reduced personal exposure. Whether that helps her, I genuinely don't know. I stopped following her news around the same time I deleted her from my phone. Frank lost the Hampton estate. The bank called the commercial loans attached to Claire's clinic guarantorship, and with the accounts frozen, there was nothing to cover them. Last I heard through a cousin, he's in a smaller apartment now. He hasn't called. I haven't called. The deed is in pieces, somewhere in a Joncourt kitchen trash bag, probably. I spent some time after that night wondering whether I'd regret tearing it up. I thought I might. I don't. There's a version of this story where I hand him that deed, and it actually changes something. Where he becomes the father I spent 34 years quietly waiting for. I used to think about that version a lot. I don't really anymore. What I did was enough. What I built was enough. If you've ever had to sit at the wrong end of a table and stay quiet while someone measured your worth against their own shallow standards, you know exactly why I didn't say a single word all night. The best revenge isn't loud, it's documented. So, if you'd been sitting in that seat, what would you have done with that deed? Drop it in the comments. Look, Nate didn't show up to that dinner angry. He showed up prepared. There's a massive difference. Angry gets you a screaming match and a story people forget by Monday. Prepared gets you a federal arrest warrant and a receipt. They called his handmade card arts and crafts, offered him minimum wage filing with a dental plan, and told him to stop embarrassing the family. He sat quietly through all of it because he didn't need their validation to keep building. The real flex isn't the black card or the firm acquisition. It's the patience. Knowing what you're worth and not needing a single person at that table to confirm it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done with that deed? And if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button. You don't want to miss what's next. My ex-wife announced her pregnancy to the whole family, trying to trap me with someone else's baby. I responded with medical records, proving I've been sterile since childhood. Hey Reddit, I'm Noah, 34 male. My wife told the whole family that I got her pregnant before she told me. Got called a deadbeat dad by all relatives, but surprise, surprise, I'm sterile. 63 relatives were in that group chat when she dropped the bomb. Both sides of the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, her parents, my parents, her grandmother, who only ever posts prayer requests and garden photos. Everyone we'd ever shared a holiday meal with was watching when she lit the fuse on my life. The message hit at 7:40 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was eating leftover Chinese in the one-bedroom apartment I'd been renting since we separated 2 months earlier. 3 years married, 2 months separated. Zero communication between us, except through lawyers arguing over who gets the furniture. And she announces a pregnancy to literally everyone we know before saying a single word to me about it. The message itself was crafted. You could tell she'd worked on it. I want to share some news. I'm pregnant. I know the timing isn't ideal given everything that's happened, but I believe every child is a blessing. I'm asking for prayers and support during this difficult time as I prepare to be a single mother. The father knows who he is. My phone blew up before I finished reading it. Her mother called first, already crying, asking if it was true and why she had to find out this way. Then my mother, confused and upset, asking what on earth was going on. Then her sister. Then my brother. Then people I hadn't talked to in years suddenly had opinions about what kind of man I was. I sat there in my kitchen watching notifications stack up, lo mein getting cold, and felt my stomach drop. Not panic exactly, something worse. That feeling when you know exactly what's happening and you can't do a thing to stop it. The chat exploded over the next hour. Her relatives sent heart emojis and prayers and promises of support. My relatives sent confused messages asking for context. Someone's cousin twice removed posted a Bible verse about fathers. Her grandmother, who could barely work her phone on a good day, somehow managed to type out a long message about blessings and reconciliation and how she was praying for everyone. Here's what nobody in that chat knew. What my wife didn't know. What I'd never told anyone in my adult life, because it's not exactly something you bring up over dinner. When I was 12 years old, I got diagnosed with testicular cancer. Caught it early because I told my parents something felt wrong down there. Mom thought it was a hernia. Took me to the doctor expecting nothing. 2 days later, I was sitting in an oncologist's office at Phoenix Children's. A week after that, surgery. 6 months of chemo followed. Lost my hair twice. Lost 25 pounds off a frame that didn't have much to spare. Spent most of 7th grade either in the hospital or too sick to leave the house. Friends came by at first, then stopped when it was clear I wasn't getting better on any schedule they understood. Nobody knew what to say to the kid who might be dying. I missed basketball tryouts, school dances, all the normal kid stuff that seemed so important back then. Got used to adults looking at me with that expression people have when they're not sure you're going to make it. Teachers being extra nice. Relatives showing up with casseroles. You know, I beat it, obviously. Wouldn't be writing this if I hadn't. No recurrence in over 20 years, and doctors say there probably never will be. I got lucky with the timing and the type, but the treatment wrecked my fertility. The doctor explained it during a follow-up when I was 15. The chemo drugs wiped out my sperm production. Azoospermia, the medical term. Permanent. I got tested twice more over the years, just to be sure. Once at 20, when I was in a relationship getting serious. Once at 26 during a routine physical. Same result both times. 0 count. I never told my wife. We got married fast, maybe too fast, after dating only 8 months. The kid conversation never came up seriously before things started falling apart for other reasons. Money problems, her family being too involved, the usual stuff that kills marriages. I figured I'd tell her eventually if we ever got to the point of actually trying for a baby. We never did. By the time the marriage was clearly over, it didn't seem to matter anymore. Now it mattered a lot. Messages kept flooding in all evening. Her aunt sent a long paragraph about family values and taking responsibility. Her cousin posted another Bible verse about fathers who abandon children. Someone I didn't even recognize sent a crying emoji about the innocent baby caught in the middle of adult drama. By 9 p.m., I snapped. Did something stupid. Something I'd regret for weeks. I typed a reply straight into the group chat. Didn't think it through. Didn't call my brother for advice. Didn't talk to my lawyer. Just reacted like an idiot who thought facts would matter to people who'd already made up their minds. I can't be the father. I've been medically sterile since I was 12 due to cancer treatment. I have documentation going back to my teens. I don't know what's going on here, but that baby isn't mine and can't be mine. Sent it before I could talk myself out of it. Chat went dead silent for 30 seconds. Those 30 seconds felt like an hour. Then the replies started coming. Her mother. This is a new low, even for you. Using your childhood illness as an excuse to abandon your responsibilities. I'm praying for your soul. Her father. Men who make excuses instead of stepping up aren't men at all. Her cousin. Wow. Just wow. I can't believe what I'm reading. Then my own aunt, who I thought might actually hear me out. Honey, I think you need to talk to someone professional. This isn't healthy behavior. In trying to defend myself with the truth, I'd handed her exactly what she needed. Now I wasn't just some deadbeat who left his pregnant wife. I was a guy so desperate to escape he was making up cancer stories. I was mentally unstable. I needed professional help. My phone rang. Mom, what is wrong with you? You can't say things like that in front of everyone. Whether it's true or not, that's not how you handle this. Mom, it is true. I have the records. I've been sterile since the chemo. Then why have you never told anyone? Why didn't you tell her before you got married? Why is this the first any of us are hearing about it? I didn't have an answer. Over 20 years of keeping quiet because I was embarrassed, because I didn't know how to bring it up, because I kept waiting for a right moment that never came. She was right. I'd made everything worse. The next 3 days taught me how fast a lie becomes an accepted truth when you've already lost control of the framing. My group chat response didn't create doubt about her claims. It made people feel sorry for her and disgusted by me. By Wednesday morning, the story had locked in solid. Desperate husband invents cancer story to dodge responsibility for pregnant wife. Her mother had screenshot my message and shared it in at least 2 other family group chats, along with commentary about how heartbreaking it was that I'd stooped to using my childhood illness as a shield for cowardice. My wife called my mother directly Wednesday morning. I heard about it later. Tearful conversation about how scared she was about the pregnancy, how deeply hurt by what I'd written in front of everyone, how she'd barely slept since reading it, said she was actually worried about me, said my message showed signs of someone who wasn't mentally well and might need professional intervention, asked if maybe the family could encourage me to get some kind of help. Mom called me right after that conversation. Did you abandon your pregnant wife? I need the real truth, not whatever performance that was last night in the chat. Mom, the sterility thing is real. I have records from doctors going back to when I was 15 years old. 3 separate tests over the years. Same result every single time, 0 count. Then why didn't you tell anyone? Why didn't you tell her before you got married? Why is this the first I'm hearing that my own son can't have children? I didn't have a better answer than the one you already heard. I kept it private, and now it was biting me in public. I need you to not talk to anyone else until I figure this out. Please, figure it out fast. Because right now, you look like a liar and a coward to everyone who knows you, including your own family. By Thursday, mutual friends started sending those not taking sides texts that were absolutely taking sides. 2 guys from college basically copy-pasted the same message. A couple we used to double date with just stopped answering. Her version spread because she was telling it to anyone who would listen, and because my clumsy attempt to tell the truth had blown up in my face. My version didn't spread because nobody believed me. I'd posted the truth directly in the family group chat, and it got immediately reframed as evidence that I was losing my grip on reality. Every fact I stated became more proof that I was cracking up. In Phoenix, word travels fast when you've been running in the same circles for years. Church community, neighborhood connections, overlapping work networks. The way everyone seems to know everyone else's business through 2 or 3 degrees of separation. All the small-town dynamics that make privacy impossible were now working against me hard. Grocery store got awkward fast. Ran into her aunt at the Fry's on Baseline, and she looked at me like I'd personally insulted her family before turning and walking the opposite direction down the aisle without saying a word. The gym got awkward too. A guy I'd spotted on bench press for years suddenly developed shoulder problems whenever I needed help. Started making excuses every time I asked. I switched to early morning sessions when nobody from our usual crowd was around. Church was obviously out of the question. Her family had been members there for 2 generations, and half the congregation had probably seen the screenshots by now. I wasn't about to sit through a service surrounded by people who thought I was the kind of guy who'd make up cancer stories to avoid being a father. Even my apartment building felt different. The manager gave me a look when I picked up a package from the office one afternoon, and I couldn't tell if she'd heard something specific or if I was just becoming paranoid about everyone. Probably both. Her dad texted me Friday afternoon. Written message, not a voicemail, so there'd be a permanent record of what he said. Told me he'd always considered me part of the family, but that real men take responsibility for their actions, regardless of the circumstances. Said he was praying I'd find the courage to step up and do the right thing before it was too late. Said his daughter deserved a lot better than what I was putting her through during such a vulnerable time in her life. I typed out 3 different responses and deleted all of them. Nothing I could say was going to change his mind without proving the medical situation first, and I didn't have that proof organized in any form that would actually matter. Her mother posted in the family chat Friday evening. Long message about the challenges her daughter was facing as a single expectant mother and how the whole family needed to step up and support her right now. Mentioned that baby supplies were getting expensive and that single motherhood was financially hard even with family help. Said she was setting up a fund to help with costs and that every little contribution would make a difference. Included her Venmo handle. Mentioned they'd already received over $400 in donation. They were actively fundraising off the lie, taking real money from relatives and church members and family friends and probably strangers who saw shared posts, all of whom believed they were helping an abandoned pregnant woman whose husband had suffered some kind of mental breakdown. My brother texted late Friday night, first contact from him since the initial explosion. Said he honestly didn't know what to believe, but that our parents were really struggling with all of this. Said mom had been crying on and off for days. Said dad wasn't talking much, which was never a good sign with him. Said he thought I should come over for dinner Sunday and try to explain things in person, away from the group chat circus. I said I'd think about it. I didn't go. Every day I stayed quiet, she filled the silence with her version of events. But every time I tried to speak up, I made everything worse. I was losing ground and I didn't know how to recover. She texted me Saturday morning. First direct contact since the bomb dropped. Long message, carefully written. Said she understood I was upset about everything. Things got out of control in ways neither of us intended. She didn't want to fight through lawyers and family members. Maybe we could meet and talk, just the 2 of us like adults. Figure out a path forward that didn't destroy everyone involved. Coffee shop near our old house. I should have kept it through attorneys. I didn't. I said yes. My thinking at the time. The group chat disaster happened because I reacted without any proof ready. If I could sit down with her and calmly explain the medical situation face to face, maybe she'd realize I wasn't making things up. Maybe she'd drop the act. Maybe she was genuinely confused about who the father was. Maybe she'd been with someone else and actually believed I was the father through some messed up timeline math. Or maybe, if I laid out the facts clearly enough, she'd admit what was really going on, and we could sort this out without dragging my cancer history through family court and putting it on some public record for anyone to find. Worth a shot, I figured. I was wrong. The coffee shop was packed when I got there. She was already seated at a small table by the front window, where anyone walking by outside could see us clearly. Looking back, she wanted to be seen. Conversation started off fine. She talked about wanting what's best for the baby, regardless of what happened between us. Co-parenting effectively, even if the marriage was done. Understanding I might need time to process everything. Then, she leaned in and asked the question she'd come to ask. Are you still planning to deny being the father? Even after what you said in the chat? I'm not denying anything. I'm sterile, and I can prove it with records and a current test. You keep saying that. But you never told me during our entire marriage. You never told anyone. And now suddenly it's convenient? It's the truth. If you want, I'll show you the records. She shook her head slowly. Expression shifted to something that looked like genuine sadness. I really hoped you'd come here ready to be honest with me, to face this like a man instead of hiding behind stories. Guess I was wrong about the kind of man you are. She stood up, grabbed her purse, said she'd pray for me, and walked out of the coffee shop while I sat there trying to figure out what had just happened. 20 minutes later, I checked my phone in the parking lot. She'd already messaged her mother, who'd already shared it to the family chat. He's still sticking to the sterile story. He looked me in the eye and lied to my face in public. I offered him grace, and he threw it back. I'm devastated. I walked in thinking I could reason with her, walked out having made everything worse for the second time in 4 days. Monday morning, I sat in a family lawyer's office in Tempe, explaining the worst month of my life. Guy named Garrett, early 60s, tired eyes that came from decades of watching families rip each other apart over money and kids. He listened to everything without interrupting. The group chat announcement, my stupid impulsive response, the coffee shop trap, the fundraising campaign, all of it. When I finished, he set his pen down and asked the one question that actually mattered. When was your last fertility test? 8 years ago, when I was 26. That's a problem. Courts hear men claim they're sterile all the time. Half of them turn out to be wrong or lying. I've had cases where a guy swore up and down he'd had a vasectomy. Then DNA came back proving he was the father anyway. If we're going to fight this, we need current medical verification from a specialist who can testify if it comes to that. Your old records from childhood are a starting point, but her lawyer will argue things could have changed over the years. He slid a document across the desk. Her attorney had already filed a motion for temporary spousal support based on the pregnancy and my alleged abandonment. The filing made me sound erratic and unstable, a man making up increasingly desperate medical excuses to avoid his responsibilities as a father. Hearing scheduled in 3 weeks. If we don't have current verification by that date, we walk in with your word against hers. And based on everything you've told me about the group chat and everything after, your word isn't worth much to anyone right now. The next few days were a crash course in how slowly medical bureaucracy moves when you need it to move fast. My original oncologist retired years ago. His practice got absorbed by a larger medical group with offices all over the valley. My old records existed somewhere in their archive system, but actually getting copies meant filling out forms, getting stuff notarized, and waiting through a 2-week processing time that had nothing to do with my court calendar. The woman on the phone sounded genuinely sorry when she explained the timeline, but sorry didn't help me. Finding a urologist who could run new testing was its own separate headache. The first office I called had a 5-week wait for new patients. Too long. The second wanted $800 up front because they didn't take my insurance and wouldn't negotiate. Third, I could maybe see me Thursday, but needed a referral from my primary care doctor first, which meant scheduling another appointment before I could even get to the one that mattered. The whole system felt designed to slow everything down. Wednesday afternoon, I gave my doctor the short version and asked for an urgent referral for fertility testing. He didn't know what to make of it, but he ran with it. Why didn't you mention the childhood cancer during previous visits? It never came up during sinus infections and blood pressure checks. He put in the referral. 5 to 7 business days for results. Meanwhile, her lawyer sent a formal letter demanding immediate response to the support motion. My lawyer filed for a continuance citing pending medical evaluation. Judge granted us 10 extra days, but made clear that further delays wouldn't be tolerated. Thursday night, I sat alone in my apartment running worst-case scenarios. If the test results came back late, or if there was any kind of administrative screw-up, I'd be walking into that hearing with nothing but my claims against hers. My word had already been publicly destroyed by the group chat disaster and the coffee shop setup. Hers had family sympathy, church support, and a fundraising campaign collecting real money behind it. The proof existed in my own body. Getting it documented and into court before she buried me was starting to feel like a coin flip. Results came back, Tuesday, day 8. Azoospermia confirmed. 0 viable sperm, consistent with chemotherapy damage. Urologist put it in writing and said he could testify in court if needed. The lawyer called it exactly what we needed, but the 8 days it took to get those results weren't quiet. The previous Thursday, someone had called my employer. I work as a project engineer for a commercial electrical contractor. Good company, solid reputation, been around for 20 years. The kind of firm that bids on hospital expansions and school renovations and government contracts. Jobs where clients actually care about who's walking around their buildings. The caller was female, according to our receptionist, expressed concerns about my personal situation, and asked whether the company was aware that I was involved in a domestic matter that might affect my reliability and stability. Used those words specifically. Reliability and stability. Like she'd practiced the phrasing beforehand. Didn't leave a name or callback number. My boss pulled me into his office Friday afternoon, closed the door behind us. Not trying to pry into your personal life, but I got a strange call this morning from someone asking questions about your stability. Said she was a concerned family member. Is there something going on I should know about? Going through a bad separation. Wife's making false claims about me. Handling it through lawyers. He nodded slowly. Appreciate you for being straight with me. Company policy is we stay out of employees' personal stuff. But if this kind of thing keeps showing up at work, we'll need to have a different conversation. We've got contracts with clients who expect reliability from people we put on their sites. One call was a warning. More calls would become my problem professionally. The same week, my landlord left a voicemail about a noise complaint filed against my unit. Someone who didn't actually live in my building had claimed I was having loud arguments at all hours and disturbing other residents. I'd been there 2 months and barely talked to my neighbors beyond nodding in the hallway. Called him back and explained that I was going through a contentious divorce and the complaint was almost certainly filed by someone connected to my ex-wife. He said he believed me but was required to document everything regardless of what he personally thought. Said if more complaints showed up, we'd have to discuss my lease situation. 2 days later, another complaint arrived. This one claimed I'd left trash in the hallway and been hostile to a neighbor who asked about it. Complete garbage. I hadn't had a conversation with anyone in that hallway beyond saying good morning. She was going after every part of my life she could reach, creating a paper trail that made me look unstable and difficult. If this went to an extended court fight, she could point to employer concerns and housing complaints as proof that I was barely keeping it together. Then her sister showed up. Sunday evening around 7. Knocked on my door without any warning. I almost didn't answer. But through the peephole she looked nervous, kept checking over her shoulder like she didn't want anyone to see her there. I opened up. She stepped inside quickly. Can't stay long, can't be seen here. But I know what my sister is doing is wrong, and I need to tell you something before this goes any further. Go ahead. She's not confused about who the father is. She knows exactly who it is, and has known all along. His name is Craig. He's her supervisor at the insurance company where she works. They've been sleeping together for almost a year. I heard a phone call 2 months ago where she was crying to him about being pregnant, and he was telling her to handle it quietly because his wife absolutely could not find out. Craig Holloway, senior claims manager, married with 2 kids. The guy my wife had mentioned casually a dozen times over the past year whenever she talked about work stuff. Always positive comments about him, how smart he was, how he really got the business, how he was the only competent manager in her whole department, how he always backed her up. Funny how that made a lot more sense now. Why are you telling me this? Because she's about to destroy an innocent man's life over a lie, and I can't be part of it anymore. I won't testify or get involved publicly. It would tear my family apart completely. But you deserve to know the truth so you can protect yourself. She left 30 seconds later. Never heard from her again after that night. She didn't come to comfort me or offer support. She came to hand me a grenade, pulled the pin, and disappeared before anyone knew she'd been there. Told my lawyer about Craig Monday morning. He said be careful how we use it. Can't just throw names around without proof. But we could note in our court response that there might be another potential father and ask for genetic testing before anyone decides who pays what. Filing didn't name Craig directly, just said there was reason to believe someone else could be the father and asked the court to figure out paternity before making any decisions about my responsibility. Pretty standard move in contested cases, apparently. That was enough to blow everything up. Within 2 days, Craig's wife found out. Not from our filing, which was still working through the system. She found out because my wife panicked hard when she realized testing was coming and there was no way around it. From what I heard later through various people, my wife called Craig the second she found out about the testing request. Things got heated fast. Craig started backpedaling hard. Maybe the timeline doesn't work out. Maybe there's someone else you haven't mentioned to me. Maybe we should both talk to lawyers before saying anything else. She did not take that well. She texted him a bunch of stuff that night that was anything but subtle. You know exactly whose baby this is. You don't get to walk away from this now. I kept records of every single time we were together. Craig's wife had been suspicious for months. Little things that didn't add up. Late nights at work that never seemed to produce anything. Phone calls he took in another room. She'd been waiting for a reason to check his phone. And that night she found one. Checked it while he was in the shower after hearing it buzz repeatedly. Found everything. The panicked conversation from that day. Older messages she didn't know about. Enough to confirm what she'd been thinking. Neighbors heard the screaming through the walls that night. His wife called a divorce lawyer first thing the next morning. Craig tried the classic move of claiming nothing physical ever happened, just emotional support that got out of hand. That story lasted about 5 minutes once she started asking specific questions about dates and location, and why exactly a coworker would be texting him about a pregnancy if nothing was going on. By the end of the week, Craig had packed a bag and was staying at a hotel off the 101. His wife hired some aggressive family law attorney out of Scottsdale that people said was known for going after cheating husbands hard. Word got back to their employer through the usual channels. Someone who knew someone who overheard the wife talking about the whole mess. HR opened a formal investigation into potential policy violation. Boss sleeping with direct report. Pregnancy and questions about whether any employment decisions or performance reviews had been influenced by the relationship. Questions about whether company resources had been used to facilitate anything inappropriate. My wife got placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Craig got suspended the same day. Neither one of them saw that coming, apparently. The donation situation turned into its own separate disaster. Multiple people from her department had contributed to the baby fund based on her tearful story about being abandoned by her mentally unstable husband. $20 contributions, $50 contributions, people chipping in because they felt bad for a pregnant coworker going through a hard time. When the real story started leaking through the office gossip network, several of them wanted their money back. That generated HR complaints about using company communication channels for personal fundraising and creating a hostile work environment by deceiving coworkers into donating money under false pretenses. Meanwhile, her lawyer sent a letter about settling. Totally different tone from everything before. No more aggressive demands about support and what I owed her. No more language about my mental instability or medical fabrications. Just talk about finding a reasonable resolution that didn't require more court dates and public testimony. She wanted to cut a deal and pretend the last 3 months never happened. I told my lawyer to write back one sentence. We look forward to the paternity testing. The test happened 2 weeks later. Court supervised, properly documented, chain of custody the whole way. No way for anyone to argue with the results or claim something got contaminated or messed up. I wasn't the father. Couldn't be. My medical paperwork went into evidence without any objection from her side. Craig got ordered to submit a sample. His lawyer told him refusing would only make everything worse and could result in the court just assuming paternity anyway. Results came back 10 days later and confirmed what everyone already figured by that point. He was the biological father. Her whole case against me fell apart overnight. Support motion got dropped immediately. Her lawyer stopped returning calls from my lawyer. We could have gone after her for everything she'd put me through over those months. The defamation, the calls to my employer, the fake housing complaints. My lawyer said we probably had a decent shot at damages. But that would have meant more months in court, more legal fees, more of my time and energy spent dealing with her instead of moving on with my life. I thought about it for a few days, ran the numbers on what litigation would cost versus what I might actually recover. I decided I wanted out more than I wanted revenge or a payout. The final divorce hearing was a Thursday in late March. Nice Phoenix spring day, mid-70s, clear sky, light breeze. I'd been through the courthouse enough times by then that the security guys recognized my face. Divorce was getting finalized that day, separate from the paternity mess, which had already been resolved weeks earlier. This hearing was just paperwork. I kept my retirement accounts. She kept the house but had to refinance within 90 days to get my name off the mortgage. Clean split. No kids, no ongoing financial ties, no legal reason to ever communicate again. The hearing took 15 minutes. The judge confirmed both parties had agreed on the terms. Papers got signed. Marriage is officially over. I walked into the hallway expecting to head straight for the elevator and get on with my life. She was waiting by the water fountain near the bathrooms. Not by accident. Deliberately positioned right where I'd have to walk past her to reach the elevators. I knew that look on her face immediately, the softened expression she used whenever she wanted something from someone. Seen it 100 times during our marriage. Seen her use it on her parents, on coworkers, on strangers in checkout lines. I know things got ugly between us. Mistakes were made on both sides. I never wanted any of this to happen the way it did. Maybe someday, when everything settles down and emotions aren't so raw, we could sit down like adults and talk about everything that went wrong. I let her finish without interrupting. When she was done, she tilted her head. Do you have anything to say? I thought about everything I could tell her. The destroyed relationships with family members and friends I'd known for years. The stress of having someone call my employer, asking questions about my stability. I could have unloaded the whole list. Everything. But none of it would matter to her. She was just checking if she still had any pull over me. Kept it short. Check your Venmo. I hear refund requests are piling up. I walked past her without waiting for a response. Hit the elevator button. She said something behind me, but I didn't catch what it was. The doors opened, I stepped inside, and that was the last time I ever saw her or spoke to her. 3 months later, things had mostly calmed down. Life started looking something like normal again. Craig's divorce went through in June, lost the house in the settlement, which his wife got to keep along with primary custody of their kids. Got hit with child support payments for his 2 existing kids, plus the new one, which apparently added up to a serious chunk of his income. Lost his job too once HR finished their investigation and found evidence he'd been giving her favorable performance reviews she didn't actually earn. Ended up taking a position at a smaller insurance company across town. Worse title, way less money, no management responsibilities. Basically had to start over in his 40s with 3 kids to support. My ex moved to Tucson in July after her professional reputation in Phoenix got torched. Nobody in her industry would touch her once the story made the rounds. Her parents found out the whole truth about the affair, and everything else sometime in May. I heard through the family grapevine that her father cut her off completely. Her mother still called occasionally, but things between them were pretty much wrecked. The grandmother who'd posted all those prayer requests in the family group chat was apparently devastated when she learned what her granddaughter had actually done. The Venmo thing worked itself out eventually. Most of the donors got refunds after enough of them complained loudly. Some people didn't bother chasing small amounts. Her mother quietly shut down the fundraising page without any public explanation or apology. They'd collected almost $1,100 before everything collapsed. Most of it got returned one way or another. My brother called a few weeks after the final hearing. I owe you an apology. Should have asked more questions before I assumed the worst about you. It was a confusing situation. Everyone got played. I'm not holding on to it. Work went back to normal once all the outside noise stopped. I kept showing up. Eventually, people found other stuff to gossip about, and I became old news. The project I'd been worried about losing during all the chaos actually got extended through year-end. Still in the one-bedroom apartment. Lease runs through December. After that, I'm looking at condos on the east side of the valley. No history attached to any room. No memories I didn't put there myself. Rebuilt things with my parents over several dinners and one long talk in early April where I finally told them everything I should have told them decades ago. Mom cried when I laid it all out. Dad just nodded and said he wished I'd trusted them with it sooner. Said he understood why I'd kept it private, but that family was supposed to be the people you don't have to hide things from. They weren't wrong about any of that. Not dating anyone. Won't be for a while. 3 years with someone who could flip a switch and become a different person when it suited her. That's a pattern I need to catch faster if it ever shows up again. But I'm doing fine. Better than fine, honestly. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.